Okay, good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing? Bang on 8 o'clock on Monday, the 30th of October. So, appreciate those of you that have been able to change your schedule at such short notice. Wow, that's a bit of a tongue twister. And join me tonight. Tomorrow is Halloween. The one thing I love doing is defending my my property from adolescent kids wanting chocolate off me. So, no, I won't be able to make it tomorrow. I've got to go out for the kids trick-or-treating. So we're going to hold it tonight. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Hopefully you can see me as well, I suppose. If you just drop us in chat, just let us know if even my lips are moving and you can't hear me, or you can hear me and it's okay. What I'll cover, just whilst I'm waiting for someone to confirm that, is what we're going to look at tonight. Well, there's quite a bit that we do usually cover on these things. We go over the news, we go over a bit of questions, a bit of Bitcoin price action, and all of that's going to be the same. We're going to go through that. We are going to have a look at a much, I suppose, higher picture. You know, Bitcoin. I should have started this from the top, really. In the last 2 weeks since I've done one of these, we've seen a 30% increase in the price of Bitcoin, taking it from around about 26,500 to 35k. It's settled back down now to around about 34,000, but an incredible move up. We're gonna have a look at how that's come about, why it's come about, where it could be taking us to, etc., etc. We'll try and break that down where we can. If you have anything you want to ask, just drop it in the chat. I'll periodically be looking over. And other than that, let's just crack on. Okay, so here it is, the Bitcoin chart, and as you can see, like I say, this is on the daily. Sort of, we had a last Avenger call on Tuesday the 17th. It was actually 28,000, and yeah, we've now seen it up at 34,000. So a fairly aggressive move. Not totally unbelievable in terms of sort of size of the move that we've had over the last 12 months, and we'll break that down a little bit later on. But we have seen that positive move. We've broken through that $32,000 ceiling that we were restricted at and having resistance against for quite some time, and it's moved up. And not only has Bitcoin moved up, Bitcoin has moved more than altcoins have, but pretty much the rest of the altcoin market has moved up as well. And so we've seen those positive gains across the board. Interestingly, the dollar has continued. I don't know why there's some drawings on this, but it's continued to sort of like, I don't know, it's kind of like a slight falling channel, I suppose. But it is sort of seeing that resistance about 107. Seen a bit of a drop off again today. We may see it fall to about 105.5. And then really it's, what's it going to do? Is it going to reverse and continue this channel, or are we actually going to find that this was a topping pattern and it'll break down through? We'll have to wait and see on that one. Let me just move this out of the way. It's quite restrictive. Okay. Right. Let's just jump straight into the news. We're going to cover charts in a lot of detail later on. What I've been doing over the last couple of weeks is I've been talking about the Sam Bankman-Fried trial. I've been trying to sort of break it down at sort of key points as to what's gone on with each of the witnesses, how their testimony has gone. And last week we had the news that Sam was actually going to go up and give evidence in the trial. Now, cut a long story short, he hasn't finished talking yet, so I feel like I'm not going to bother talking about his testimony just yet, because we might as well wait till it's completely finished and then we can cover both sides. But on Thursday last week, he took to the stand. He spoke with his, I suppose, predominantly his defense attorneys for the last couple of days, and the prosecution has had an opportunity from today to be able to cross-examine him. Now, we don't really get updates on the day because there's no computers and no phones allowed in the courts. We kind of have to wait for the end of the day. So I don't know if he's finished with the prosecutors or where that's going to be. So I think just the best thing to do is park it until next week. Then we'll come back and cover it. Okay. Let's move on to some of the other news. This is kind of interesting. It's one of those ones where, did this cause the pump, or was the pump coming and this just happened to be a coincidence? But just as the pump was starting, we started to see that BlackRock's iShares ETF ticker appeared on a website that probably 99% of you, including myself, had never heard of, which is the DTCC, which is the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, for those of you that like your acronyms. And everyone got very excited about that because the thought process behind it is that this is a prerequisite, that it needs to appear on this website. It's one of the stages that happens prior to any ETF, it doesn't have to be a Bitcoin one, being approved. So suddenly there was a lot of rumors around there that this is it. We're going to get an ETF approving. There was no timescale within that, but the market seemed to turn up. But then within, I don't know if it was a few hours or so, it disappeared. It went off, and we had something similar to that before I went away, in which Cointelegraph posted some bullish news, and then a couple of hours later took it down. There was a very similarity to this. Just, was this again another case of manipulation? But then actually it reappeared again only a few hours later. So there's a bit of confusion there. But ultimately it got to the stage where iShares, or BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin ETF, which is IBTC, appeared on their website, and it remained. And this is what it looked like. This is what everyone got excited about. This little ticker here, one that's highlighted in orange. And there's so many people that were just jumping on the back of this as this is it. This is the necessary step that goes forward. And you could see that bullish momentum was coming. And whilst when it was removed, there was a slight pullback, this coincided with around about 20% pump of the price of Bitcoin, in the few hours around there. So this was certainly a key narrative or well-timed article to go with an injection into the market. But, and there is a big but, because then everyone started talking about other ETFs being listed on this website. So there was ARK 21 shares. There was a couple of other ones as well. Who was the other one? I can't remember. I suppose it doesn't necessarily matter. Everyone was saying, well, they're now on it. That update took away BlackRock, put BlackRock back, and now it added others. Actually, that turned out that wasn't the case. That was a genuine rumor that wasn't proved to be true. But in the this is the beauty thing about crypto. This is why I kind of enjoy reading the news, because you see an article like this and you really have to dig into it, because all these articles are coming about how DTC listed this spot Bitcoin ETF. But a spokesman came out and actually said, you know what, guys, I don't know what you're talking about. This is a DTCC spokesman officially commented on the behalf of the DTCC, stating that the BlackRock iShares spot Bitcoin ETF ticker had actually been listed on their website from August. And yet what actually happened is someone had just noticed it now, and suddenly that's what drove the market. And I don't know if it's in this article. It is, yeah. Here we go. So while the crypto market soared on the news that BlackRock's iShares spot Bitcoin ETF, IBTC, had been listed on the DTCC site, a DTCC spokesperson recently revealed that IBTC had actually been listed on their website since August. So all that hype that came about from this listing is just complete and utter horse crap. It was just, that's the first time someone had noticed it, or someone with a significant enough following. Everyone just jumped on that and went, yep, great, that must be it. Nobody actually bothered to delve in and actually check to see whether or not that was true. Now, I'll be honest, this DTCC website is crap. I tried to go on it to try and find this particular list. I couldn't really do it, navigate around it. So I can see why there might have been some confusion. But they've come out and clearly said, no, guys, it's been on there for months. But nobody really, look, it warrants one paragraph buried, 12 paragraphs in on this article. I suppose ultimately it doesn't really, sway where this is going. I think that move up would have happened regardless of what had happened. But it is there. And it's just one of those things that always annoys me about the crypto news and the crypto sort of spaces. It's either so super bullish or so super bearish, depending on which time in the cycle we're at, that nobody actually bothers to do the thorough due diligence of actually, is that information that just come out true? And I suppose that's why, I kind of always hold back initially. I try and find a couple of sources just to confirm what's happening. And if I find it, then yeah, I'm happy to go on. But if it's just one random person with a handle that you wouldn't want to tell your grandma on Twitter telling you that, then perhaps we need to think twice. Anyway, in other news, this is another interesting one linked to ETFs. And we talked about this all the way through July and then the announcement in August. But if you remember, back at the end of August, the court ruled in favor of Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF application needed to be re-reviewed by the SEC Basically, they said that they didn't have the grounds in which that they could just reject it. The whole point being that Grayscale's, boiling it down, Grayscale's spot Bitcoin ETF was based on the same parameters as the futures Bitcoin ETF, which the SEC had approved. So the SEC then can't come out and say, well, wait a second. Well, the SEC came out, should I say, and said, oh, we reject it because, we have some concerns about it. Grayscale is saying, well, we don't appreciate that ruling because you're telling us it's okay for futures, but not for a spot. The court and the agreed with Grayscale, and that case, I suppose, came to an end on the 29th of August. Why is the date important? Well, the SEC effectively had 45 days in which to appeal the decision, but they didn't appeal it. So they had all that time and they chose not to appeal it. So that basically means that the judge's ruling is issued as a mandate. That's what they call it. Basically saying, right, well, you haven't appealed it. You've run out of time now. So that ruling is final. What does that mean? It doesn't automatically mean that Grayscale is going to get a spot Bitcoin ETF. But what it does mean is the SEC has to now either approve it or re-review it and find a clear reason as to why it has been rejected. Now, there's a lot of hearsay that goes with this, that, the SEC's stance on ETFs is slowly softening because they are getting ready to approve ETFs sort of in the very near future. And so they didn't want to be seen to appeal this because they would obviously, a couple of months' time, look like, well, why did you change your mind from there? So we don't have a timescale, or I certainly can't find a timescale of how long the SEC need to take to re-review Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF. But it is interesting that we can see that the court finding has been upheld. The SEC did not appeal it. They specifically chose not to appeal it. And now we're awaiting whether or not they are going to approve it, or they're going to find a genuine reason for why they're going to reject it. And that reason, obviously, could then potentially be applied to other spot ETFs. So there certainly feels to be a change in the landscape, if nothing else, in terms of the ETFs. And there's a question on the Avengers chat a little bit later on about ETFs, so I'm not trying to delve into it too much now. But there does seem to be the sentiment change. There does seem to be a very positive attitude in places like crypto Twitter. I know I told us not to pay too much attention to that, but even a lot of analysts, a lot of experts in the area are kind of saying this is not a case of if, it's a case of when. And given the timescales that we have, and we'll go over those timescales in a little bit of time, left remaining on a vast majority of these applications, it kind of feels that within the next 3 to 6 months, 3 to 5 months, we should have that decision. Okay. That's kind of it for the news. Obviously, I was away for a couple of weeks. So I was only trying to pick things that sort of came out. There was nothing else there that I think really needs to be discussed. I'm sorry. Let me just do something. Just bear with me a second. That ping you can hear is because I've not put streamer mode on Discord. So every time there's a Discord message that comes in, it pops over it. But if I activate streamer mode, I'll take it off. Okay, that's done. Hopefully we won't hear those. We will now, I'm sure. Right, let's move on. So before we delve into that, there's something that I've been meaning to mention for a while, just because I almost tripped up on it. So any of you here that happen to be in NEAR, this is a very specific thing, but we're getting to a crunch deadline, and have been staking it through the NEAR wallet. If you haven't been keeping up with that, you have until close of play tomorrow to effectively unstake everything and move it to another wallet. Now, it's actually a very simple step to do, and you can do it through the transfer wizard, and I did it, in no time whatsoever. But just bear in mind that if you leave it in there, it doesn't mean you're going to lose your NEAR, but you won't be gaining any rewards for your staking. Effectively, you're just locking it up for the sake of locking it up. It's nothing too onerous. Essentially, the web address that they are using here, walletnear.org, they're going to use as like a central hub for lots of different web wallet options out there. So they just need to kind of take it out and re-put it back in. I went with the exact same validator that I had before. It took me less than 5 minutes. Nothing necessary to worry about. But if it is just a personal announcement to anyone that has any NEAR, you're not aware of this, then please do check this out. And I think that goes as a bit of a healthy reminder in if you have some altcoins, probably not an issue with Bitcoin, but if you have some altcoins, you've had them a while, whether they've been staking or they're just lying dormant in a wallet, this is why I say you just always need to sort of you can't switch off totally, because certain things change and there might be micro changes that you just need to be aware of. And so it's always good to just get into your routine, whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever, of just churning through, making sure everything's tickety-boo. Tickety-boo, bloody hell, what does that sound like? Make sure everything is okay, and then you can take it from there. Right, let's get away from that service announcement now and move on to some of the questions that we've been had. Now, apologies, guys, a few of these are quite old because I wasn't here last week, so it's 2 weeks worth, if you will. And Crypto Guy, you had me scratching my head for a while, to be honest, because I haven't seen a trading pub in a while. But just wondering your opinion on the Casper unofficial office picture that was mentioned in the pub. I assume you mean the trading pub, not down the pub. Just not what I imagined a crypto top 40 dev office to look like. Laptops, power cables, etc. It took me a while to find it. I had to ask a couple of people. But I assume this is the photo that you're talking about, which came out a couple of days ago. And this is potentially a concern that you might have. For me, I genuinely don't have an issue with this. People know that I'm not as into Casper as a lot of people in the group are. And whilst I've never really tried to shit on it or anything like that, a picture like this is, for me, not a reason to be particularly worried. Why? Well, actually, from what I understand in reading the tweet, these are a couple of the devs that are based in Israel. Now, I don't know which part in Israel they are, but they've had to make a makeshift office to just carry on working. And I don't have a problem with that. Okay, there might be a kid's playset in the back, but who cares what's in the back of your office? My office has got some random crap in the back of it. Doesn't change it. My wife's office next door is actually in the kids' playroom. That doesn't undermine what necessarily that she does. And so I don't think anything of it. I think actually there's a jolly good spirit of just trying to continue to develop through whatever adversities you find. And I find that entrepreneurial spirit to be one of the most powerful things. And to give you an example, whilst I was looking for this, I mean, take a look at this. Look at Apple, Google, and Amazon. Look at where they originally started out. Now, I am by no means saying that Casper is in the same league as these three, but I'm just giving you three of the largest tech companies in the world, and most of them have been started out either in a shitty office filled with old monitors and junk behind it, or someone's parents' garage. It happens plenty of times in which that can be. So for me, Crypto Guy, I don't really have any concern with that. I understand you may, but you got to remember there is no team, there is no funding necessarily for an office, and why do they need it? In the kind of world that we live in right now, why do we need, huge glass offices that cost hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars or whatever it is to rent per month? I certainly wouldn't want a project wasting money on that if they didn't necessarily have to. So that's just my thoughts on it. Going back, Adams put thoughts on doing spiky fades for gas BTC on OKX instead of Binance. Potential for more spikes. Safe question. And then he's put, sorry, I meant gas USDT on OKX. Well, gas has moved. Gas has woken up recently. But what we'll do before we look at the chart, we'll just have a look at the price. The price. We'll just have a look at the markets. So I'm not going to go into what a spiky fade is. It is different to a halo. Just bear that in mind. But you're looking at gas USDT. So Binance, the 24-hour volume is 45 million. Whereas you look at it on OKX, it's a tenth of that, It's 4.5 million. So by all means, that's still available for you to do that. But this would be where I'm looking. And the thing you've got to also remember is, what's the depth like? How often are you going to be slipped? What's the difference? 2% either side of it. And these are relatively close. And why do I bring that in? Well, I've seen a Telegram recently. Simon says he may end up getting back in to these spiky fades and all that. And if you suddenly have quite a lot of people, even in the crypto, even in the RT community, looking to do it, for me, I want to go with the place with the biggest volume. Now, to be fair to Simon, I think he's very much in my camp, which is a gas BTC play. That way, you can see that actually the volume is pretty low, 1.4 million. And that has been an issue in the past that I've experienced when doing this. And sometimes when you look to sell, there isn't the volume, you get slipped quite a lot. But you've got to take that into account where it goes. Now, I think it's worth talking about, if I can get a chart open, just bear with me. Get a clean one. We go into gas. Oh, that's gas BUSD. We go, bring this over. So let's just have this on the 3-day. Let's just put it on the daily, actually. So this is gas. Let's just like that. Gas BTC. And spiky fade is effectively trying to take advantage of these sharp spikes up and then the immediate pullbacks down. Now, what we always kind of look for when we were doing a spiky fade was a steady base in which we could buy in. And if you look at this here, that proved to be, this was, you know, from, I don't know, August 21 all the way through to Feb 23. And actually, you could kind of extend it out here because that actually is a spiky fade. So we had nearly, you know, a year and a half's worth of just ranging there. And yes, we have seen some ranging down here. But I personally would think that now is possibly the worst time to get back into spiky fades because one, we haven't seen this pull back down. And two, we just don't know. The whole problem is you're buying the underlying asset waiting for it to move up. And the reason that I was, you know, concerned here was we went below the level that I, you know, originally got in and it kept on falling. And I was waiting for it to stabilize. Now it did stabilize for sort of 3 months down here, but that's nothing compared to this kind of level. So I haven't got back in. So what I would like to see is this to come back down, but then hold it. And then I'd be looking, you know, if it held sort of its range around here, I'd be looking to try and get back in and take advantage of those spikes. But right now, this is definitely the worst time. We don't know what it's going to do. This isn't a buying the asset because you want to do it. What you want to do is you want to take advantage of the seesaw of the value of gas versus BTC. So ultimately, you're using your BTC to buy gas when it's low. Then when this shoots up, you sell your gas into BTC and you end up with more BTC than you started. But right now, if I waste my BTC to buy up here and it moves back down, I'm already lost value. Then that first spike up is only taking me to break even. So I need this to come back down. But even that's not good enough because I need to know that this is going to be the base again. And so, you know, it's just not a play. It's a much simpler thing to do in the bull run, in my honest opinion. Where gas speed and BTC are generally, you know, the price, the US dollar value is moving up, but the balance between BTC and gas is sort of remaining static. And then every so often it just shoots up. So I'm not really looking at this at the moment. Had I have got in, I mean, I got out here, might have been a bit higher. So I really, you know, I would have been, let's say I was holding there. That's where I bought in. Instead of seeing, let's just clear this, Jesus. So instead of seeing the benefit of a 100% increase, because I'd bought here, assuming that I held it down all the way, I'd actually only have seen 50%. All of this would have been a loss. Yes, I'd have recovered it. Now 50% is still great on the spiky fades. Of course it is. Imagine you had even 0.1 of the BTC down here. You've doubled it in a day. And then it comes back down. You go again. Anyway, hope that helped. Let's just close that. I'll close some of these as we go because there's an awful lot open at the moment. Okay. Chris has put thoughts on Jasmine Coin, Mantle, and Mina fundamentals and charts, please. So, okay, we'll have a look at those. Two of them I can actually pretty much cross off straight away. So, Mantle. So, I don't know which Chris this is. Don't know how long you've been in the group for. But Mantle, if you're not aware, I've actually already covered in the research tokens. So, Mantle, as I understand it, is actually BitDAO. It's just been renamed. And so if you follow this link from the 9th of May, I actually did a segment, 15, 20, 30 minutes on BitDAO. So I won't bother going through it now and wasting your time. You can just click on that, scan through to wherever it is. I don't think I was a particularly big fan of it. I'll just say that. And Mina, well, Mina's either going to be the next or the one after token. So it's coming up pretty soon. So again, you know, we can have a quick look. Mina, its price, I mean, I know it's not an actual trading view chart, but well, I suppose let's look at what it is first. So it says here the Mina is a lightweight smart contract platform with aspirations to be a global payment system. Well, that seems familiar. It aims to address the scalability issue presented in existing blockchains where the cost to verify the blockchain grows proportionally with the total transactions throughput. The goal of Mina is to design a decentralized payment system that offers efficient verification of system history from Genesis without relying on an external advice. This is achieved using the Ouroboros Saminsky proof of stake consensus, SNARKs, and a payment system. I'll be honest, that basically means nothing to me at the moment, but I will look into it for you. But that's what it is. The price pretty much flatlined. You know, I mean, okay, it was born in the summer of 21, so we're going to see. Let's just take that out of the equation. Let's just say we're August. We got up to around about 6, so we're about 90% drop on where we were at the moment. But it has been flatlined for the best part of a year and a bit, year and a half. So we shall have to wait and see. It's on some decent exchanges, and we'll go through the rest of that in a couple, well, either a week or two's time. So that leaves me with Jasmy Coin. So what is Jasmy Coin? This is it. It's ranked 150, and I tell you what, look at that, is a flat line. I'm struggling to find any interest to look into this one, I'll be honest. So again, let's just get rid of this obviously hype in and around when it launched, and probably a massive token dump that caused this to happen. So I imagine we've got nearly 50 billion Jasmines in supply. I imagine what happened is this launched with a pretty low circulating supply. I mean, we're already at 98%. So this has probably had loads of really large dumps, and it's just sort of just pushed the price down because there's absolutely zero demand for this token. So let's just get rid of that and just say, okay, well, we'll take it to here. And if we look at it, this is sort of leading up to the second peak in the altcoin. That was up to 27 cents and then a massive fall away. And, bearing in mind, we are not even 0.5% at the moment. So huge potential. Whether or not it's going to get there with 50 billion tokens out there, who knows? So what's it actually do, and where is it? So I actually have clicked on the website. So this is the website. You can believe it or not. This is it. You click on Jasmy. This is what it gives you. I mean, this ain't telling me. This ain't jumping out at me going cutting edge cryptocurrency. It's based in Japan. It's providing platform and solutions for IoT, so Internet of Things. Okay, we've got some understanding of what it is. But then it just goes to company profile. This is the website. Okay, this is it. Company profile, key people, and then who they are. That's it. That's all you got. But luckily, if you go back onto CoinMarketCap, it does give you the white paper, and thank God it does. So it's all in Japanese. There's no English translation for this, so this does nothing for me, unfortunately. I couldn't tell you anything about it, and with that, I just can't be bothered to learn about it. It doesn't really jump out at me as something that's going to be amazing. It says here in the summary, it's building a private smart contract-based blockchain, aren't they all? It's to power the Internet of Things platform. We've got some big contenders with the IoT sector, so I'll look at that in a minute. Jasmy platform where users will be able to control access to their data. IoT device owners will store that data in personal data lockers as part of a platform's distributed file storage system and determine if and when third-party merchants may access their information. Do you know what? I just am not interested. Chris, I'd love to know how you found these three and why you're interested in my thoughts on them. Is it just because last couple of days they've moved? But I mentioned, who it's against. So look at some of the competitors in this sector. We've got VeChain, we've got IOTA, Fetch AI, Helium. Jasmy's there, so it's 149, but it is the 7th largest. I just can't get overly excited about it. And I did want to just go back and have a look at supply charts, supply, all time. I mean, here we go. So it has it went from 5 billion, 48 billion, 47 billion. In what? The space of a week or two. So that just, that amount of circulating supply flooding the market is, the demand now to build that price back up. It's just not there. I just don't understand how it's going to be there. So yeah, I honestly, I'm sorry. I try and find any interest, but at such short notice, I just, this isn't for me. This could be the next biggest thing, and good luck to anyone that takes that risk reward, but it's 99.68% down on its all-time highs. So good luck with that one. So close that down. A little bit of Mina. Don't need that. Right. Chris has also put discussions about taking profits over the next few months. I.e., if one of the blue chip pumped 20% in a day, worth selling at market into BTC and then wait to re-enter on pullback. Well, I mean, we've seen a 20% pump. We saw that over the last couple of weeks. So you're definitely onto something there. And if you've recently bought, then there's definitely an opportunity for you to take some profits. And we'll cover that why. But I will just put your attention to, I did actually post this in the chat. Someone asked me to update the 3-pot system that I used back in the last bull run, which I did, but I actually then covered my profit taken, and it's less than a month old, this. So have a look in it. If you then go into Discord and have a look in the Avengers section, I've actually reposted all of the charts of my zones and pockets. You can get an idea of how I'm taking profit and areas that I'm doing it. I'm not going to waste anybody's time with it tonight. That kind of covers it, Chris. But it's definitely worth checking out. And for anyone else that wants to have a look at it, just my opinion. I will caveat, consider it written in sand. Some of the levels may change and some of the amounts may change, but I just have a generalized plan as to what it is that I want to do. It's not really based on time. It's more based on price, if I'm honest. But yeah, have a look at it. Hopefully that helps, Chris. Richard's then gone and put, are you worried about the sell pressure on DOT long term? As people try to sell their bags from parachain releases, etc., as price increases? Well, ultimately, most of these tokens that have staking capabilities, you've got to be aware that there could be a decent amount of sell pressure as people want to take profits. Now, with DOT, it's a bit of an interesting one because they had the parachain model. The parachain allowed projects to take on board DOT, use that to collateral to then ultimately try and develop whatever project they were working on. And now we're getting to the period where that lockup period is ending for some. Now, what does that mean? Well, I kind of look at it as two ways, I suppose. Yes, there is going to be an awful lot on DOT available to be onto the market, which you're right, could cause some sell pressure in the short term, never mind the long term. And so what are people going to do with that DOT, and how are they going to view that level of investment? I think we need to sort of just take a step back as to where was DOT at the level of parachains, because bear with me a second. Let's go to a clean chart. Get DOT open. It's on the 3-day. So the first parachains launched in the beginning of November, so around about here. And this pump up was, maybe it didn't start there, but this pump up was really driven by the hype around parachains. So if you were lucky, you got a decent amount of your DOT that you wanted to allocate to parachains at $10, $11. But let's face it, retail are just idiots, and they probably wouldn't have cottoned onto this until at least 26, maybe 30, maybe even 40, probably some suckers buying at 52 just to lock up into their parachains. Because although the parachains started there, they continued weekly all the way through this price decline. But someone might have bought their allocation up here. We didn't know the bull run was over at that stage. And so you look at where the price of DOT is now, and we're 90% down from those levels, 80-90% down. So yes, some people may sell immediately because they're just so sick and tired of it. They just want to take whatever they can back, and I get that. But there'll be a lot of people who will go, I need to wait. I need to wait till break even or close to break even so that I can then, recoup as much as I can and then move on. But there'll also be others that are, like myself, that believe in Polkadot, and they're like, okay, well, I still believe the next cycle Polkadot and the way things are changing things with version 2, etc. Again, video of what they're doing there is in that same folder on Vimo, so feel free to check it out. And so they'll just either hold it or they potentially could look to stake it. And something actually quite interesting has happened with the staking, which is very similar to what happened to ETH after ETH 2.0 and the unlocking capability. You look at Polkadot, and I've scrolled down here. It's the track performance over time, and it's staked Polkadots. So back in August, there was just under 600 million dots staked. And then that's just climbed and climbed and climbed. And then since those unlockings have been happening, we've had it continue to climb again. It says it's at 685 million, but actually this hasn't been updated because we're actually at about 694 million if you have a look at the actual Polkadot website. So we've had 100 million dot locked up, staked, and continued to be in staked over the last 3 months. And so I think there is, a consensus that actually people do still believe in DOT, and so they are going to tie it up. Just, it is still a fairly decent low to medium risk reward in terms of the APY. It's around about 14-15% per annum, which is not too bad, and you can compound it so that you can get some benefits from that as well. Anyway, that's what I think I'm doing. So that's kind of the short term, which wasn't really a question. In terms of the longer term, yes, people are going to sell it, but I have my targets. I have my levels that I want to sell it at as well. And I'm not waiting. I'm not going to wait to sell 100% at the end. I'm going to stagger it, which I cover in that video, which I answered to Chris. Have a look at it if you would like. But we also get a good indication because the Polkadot unlock is 28 days. So we'll start to see that people are unlocking. And certainly what I will be doing is that balance of risk to reward. I still think there's at least probably another year of me being able to stake DOT quite comfortably. Then in about 12 months time, I'll probably start look to unstake, I don't know, maybe 50%. So that is always in a liquid band. Might move that to a place like Kraken, in which I can stake it in a highly liquid pot. I don't get as much, I only get about 11%. It's still better than a kick in the teeth, but I can unstake it within 2 hours and then look to sell it. And so that way I can start to get some advanced warnings because I'll see that this will start to drop off as people start to unstake this. And then I'll know that actually there might be some potential sell pressure. Now, if people are selling in the bull market, that sell pressure might get eaten up quite quickly anyway, because that's naturally how things happen. And we did see that with ETH when the unlocking of ETH happened. Everyone thought there was going to be a big sell of people who bought it at $900 were going to look to sell and benefit from that. But actually, there's a lot of people who bought it at $4,000 and they continued to stake it, and actually levels of staking increased. So I don't see it necessarily as a threat. It could be, if you're blind to this and you don't bother doing anything, you can certainly be caught out. But I think I've got a plan in my mind in what I'm going to do to try and mitigate that level of risk. So I'm not worried, Richard, if I'm honest. Richard, you actually posted another one in questions for the Q&A session, which sounds like the right place to post it. But actually, that was when I did an AMA Ask Me Anything. So I missed this one completely from a couple of weeks ago, but I found it again, so I'll bring it back in to have a chat about it. And you put, are you expecting a pre-halving dump based on the buy the rumor, sell the news type event? Or do you think when ETFs get approved, that the effect will be so strong that it will have a very positive and consistent impact on BTC's price? Could you also talk about the ETF reviews of the applications and when might be the earliest we could see one approved? Thanks. Okay, so there's definitely, that sort of mantra, that saying of buy the rumors, sell the news, it does happen. And we're going to have a look at some charts in a moment. That happens across all sorts of things. Of course it does. That's why it's there. But it's a case of risk to reward. That's always what you got to be thinking about, is how much could it dump, and is it worth me trying to guess where the top's going to be and then selling, probably going to miss a bit at the top, then going to wait for it to fall back down, then try and find a level to buy back in, probably going to miss the exact bottom, and suddenly that little slice that you're left with, is it really worth the risk to reward? Bearing in mind that this is a pre-bull run, we're going to assume that the 4-year cycle continues, and we are going to see a bull run. So do you take the risk on potentially getting a 10% increase on your overall portfolio, which then you can take forward for 12 months worth of glorious rising, or run the risk of actually you miss out on the 10% because you've just poorly timed, and you end up having to buy back more. Less, because it's costing you more. And for me, I kind of didn't do anything last time around about the halving. I wasn't massively in. I'd only just started getting back in, so I suppose my mindset wasn't really there to do that. But we've been preparing this for a year. But for me, I don't think I will do anything. I haven't answered your question, but that's just from where I am. I'm in a very fortunate position at the moment. It's a shame I can't show you because Delta doesn't have a desktop. It only has a mobile phone version. But some of the Bitcoin that I bought at £13,000, which was around about $15,000 to $16,000, you know, we're talking that's over 100% at the moment. And yeah, I could sell some waiting for a pullback, but where's the risk to reward on that? I might as well just sit on that and just continue to keep buying as I have been doing and just ride that. And that's what I'm going to do. And so I just don't think this is something that I'm going to look to play myself. Now, in terms of this chart, I'll try and zoom in a bit now. Obviously, this is where we're at the moment. I'll do this again just because it changes every time I do it. The halving clock, let's have a look. So we are 167 days away. We reckon it's going to be around about the 15th of April. That will change. I've seen it from late March to early May. So, but around about 160, 170 days from now. So let's just drop a line in on a vertical line. There. That's pretty much where we think the halving is going to be. Okay. Nothing, not really relevant for now, apart from just to give you an idea that, you know what, we're 5 months out from this. But let's have a look at some of the previous ones. So the last one happened on the 11th of May 2020, the Bitcoin halving. I'll zoom in now so we can actually get a bit closer to what the price was and where it was. And it was on this candle here. Okay, well, this is the 5-day chart. It was on that candle there. And you're right, it did drop. You know, buy the rumor, sell the news. But this was buying the rumor out of the COVID crash. But buy the rumor, sell the news. But how far did it really fall? It fell 10%, 11%. Now, assuming that you're not going to react immediately because you don't know that falling is really settling in, you know, where's the risk to reward on that? It just isn't there. You know, by the time you sell, you're probably selling down about here. You've missed the bottom. It's come back up. You'd be lucky to get back in here, if I'm honest. So you maybe make, what, 1%? Fees, factoring in, stress. It just doesn't work for me, in my opinion. That's where it is. And this was after some uncertain times. Yeah, money printers had gone back on, but we didn't really know what was going on with COVID and everything shutting down and all that kind of stuff. So it had a fairly decent, reaction to it. But I think the strength afterwards was just too much for me to do. Yes, okay. I suppose you could argue that if you had diamond hands and you were able to see it pass all the way back up without buying back in, it did fall back down to around about that 5% level. But it's not for me. But let's have a look at the one before that. Which is here. Okay, the 9th of July 2016. And so this is it. This is the 9th, bang on. And it was at 655. And then we had, if you really got there, this did actually fall 29%, 30%. It's a 5-day chart, so realistically. So this one, I suppose you had more of an opportunity to do it, but I think it was a bit more volatile back then, just not as many people were involved within it. But again, even that, it's a couple of days after it happens. Let's just drop onto the day. How quickly did that? Excuse my language, but I've got to refine this now. There we go. You could argue you sold just prior to it, maybe, and the drop happened there. But we're talking about on the day. You sat on this for a couple of weeks, sold here, and it didn't do anything for a couple of weeks. You might be feeling a bit nervous, but let's say you held your nerve. 3 days, it's down here, and then we're back up. And if you haven't reacted on that 4th day, you might think, it's going to fall further, it's fine. But if you haven't, you've not got 30%. You've got, at best, 14%, and it only gets worse from there. And so again, for me, it's just not worth the risk or the reward. That's just my honest opinion on it. I've spent the last year and a bit building a Bitcoin position. because I want to see it into into the next bull run. And what you will see from that profit taking video is there isn't an idea of what I'm going to do with Bitcoin, because that's the one that I am going to hold on to for as long as possible. But there's some more macro indications that I'm going to look to use to sort of try and maximize that. The altcoins are what I'm playing around with. The Bitcoin's kind of, safety net, if you will. You had a couple more points to your question. So do we think ETFs get approved that will be an effect that will be so strong that have a very positive effect? Okay, so there are two things that you need to consider, in my opinion, with the ETFs. One, it is the emotional narrative that comes with that from crypto, retailers, if you will, us, influencers, whatever you want to call us. Because we're so caught up on the fact that ETFs are going to be the thing that brings in trillions of dollars worth of investment into it. And it likely will. And we've seen on, with the false rumors of Bitcoin ETFs taking it from 25,000 to 31K, when we do get it, that first news announcement, it will spike. But it doesn't, just because an ETF has been announced, doesn't mean that that day, whichever company it is, they will suddenly be starting to trade that. The announcement will come through, and then there's certain things that may need to happen. Now, one of the things that I'm actually not 100% certain on is, can the likes of BlackRock buy BTC now and ring fence that for their ETF, or does the SEC dictate that they actually have to wait until the ETF is approved, and only at that stage can they purchase BTC that will be used for the ETF? Now, if that is the case, then actually institutions aren't buying Bitcoin at the moment. They're going to have to buy it when their ETF is approved. Now, that could move the price and sustain that price to be high. But if they've already bought it, whether or not they've bought it and then they over counter sell it from BlackRock Bitcoin holdings to BlackRock ETF for whatever price they paid for it, that's not going to affect the price, because one, it's over the counter, and two, they have actually already gone and bought it. And I did try and go through like the SEC manuscript on that kind of stuff with ETFs, but it doesn't clearly, not in a language I certainly understand anyway, break down how that is. But that would have it. Now, I said there'd be two phases of this, because that retail mentality will definitely move the price. Absolutely. But I think that will only get us so far, because that's not institutions moving in yet. So what I think we'll see is we will see a sharp move. And I think the last couple of weeks, with the news that happened with the DTCC and also the fake ETF approval, has just shown how desperate retail are to move this price. So once we get a cast iron confirmation, if you are still sat on the sideline, I think that's going to be a pretty painful experience, in my opinion. But what I then think will happen is we'll get that move up. We will either see it just, fall back down, maybe not all the way, but, sort of as some selling pressure, people take profits, etc. Or we'll just see it consolidate at a high level. But then I think when the institutions start coming in, I think we might see more. Again, it's not necessarily because the institutions are flooding in additional funds into the market so much. But again, it's another layer of confidence that actually now the ETFs are open for people to invest in. It means that Bitcoin has been validated. People are, those that hated it for years are now actually using this as a bedrock, as an investment. And I think that level of confidence will also bring retail in, which will then start to move the price. In terms of the approvals and how it goes through, I'm not an expert necessarily on ETF applications or anything like that. In terms of the approval dates, well, what happens is once the application has been made, the SEC has several opportunities in which to review the application with timelines. And at those different choke points, they can either approve, reject, or delay. And what has typically happened through the last 27 ETF applications that have happened is that they have been delayed until the absolute final one and then rejected. Now, I did a talk back in June when Bitcoin opened. So Bitcoin made their announcement. I think it was here at the Teleos one. So on around about the 27th of June, I think on that video, I go through in detail the timescales. You have, I think the first a review period the SEC has is 45 days. I think the second one is 45 days. I think the third one is 90 days, and the final one is 60 days. And if my maths is right, that's 240 days from start of application to the final approval stage. I think that is the figures. That they might be in a different order, but first two are definitely 45. So that's kind of the timescales. Now, where are we sitting? Because we have like 7 or 8 applications currently live at the moment, and that can be kind of confusing. It's the easiest one to view. This comes from Bloomberg Intelligence and the SEC government, so we've got to take this with a fair amount of authority. Although what I would say is the second deadline dates are a little bit different, or I'll get to it. So what we've got the ARK 21 shares Bitcoin ETF. Now that was filed first, okay? And so that is why this is ahead of the rest of the bunch. And then all of the other ones happen within a couple of days of each other. And so that's why they're much closer together. So where do we currently sit at the moment? Well, we've had the second deadline. But what we found was the SEC announced about 3 or 4 days beforehand, actually I think it was about 2 weeks beforehand, that they were postponing the application. Why were they doing that? Well, if you remember, there was an issue with the debt ceiling. They were worried that they were going to have to shut the government down in and around the time in which the deadline needed to be made. Plus, the deadline fell on the weekend, so we always knew it was going to be announced beforehand. So this is my caveat, because they postponed it 2 weeks beforehand. I do think that these have all moved forward 2 weeks, because they still now only have the 90-day or the 60-day window from whenever the previous one was. So instead of it being the next deadline being the 15th of January 2024, I think it's much earlier on. I think it's the first week in January 2024 for a lot of these. And then the final deadline is going to be the beginning of March. It's kind of coinciding with Bitcoin halving, which we've kind of talked about ourselves. But don't be fooled. They don't have to wait until the 15th or the 5th or whatever it is in January. They can make an announcement, either rejecting or approving it whenever they want. And so that's kind of the game of Russian roulette that we're playing at the moment of, do we keep our powder dry, thinking that the chamber is clear, and they're not going to approve it before at least the beginning of January? And so we've got opportunity to buy in. But if they actually do pull the trigger on that, we're not in the market, we might see a huge climb in the price in which you're left behind. Which is why I've always advocated DCAing in. I've been doing that for the last 12 months. And yeah, it's been a bit painful at times in some aspects, but I'm feeling very comfortable in the positions that I'm in. And I do think that, for me, is the right investment strategy. For you guys, it might not be. Let's go back. So when is the earliest that one could be approved? Tomorrow. Could be. Not sure that it will, but yeah, there's no reason that they have to wait. But I hope that helps, Richard. Sorry it took me a couple of weeks to get back to it. Not too much in the chat today, but Mr. Tacker has put, so an NFT generator to use as access to an IoT. Sounds like it hits 2021 buzzword bingo. This is going back onto Jasmine, yeah. The only thing is missing is DAO. I know if it had rebasing DAO, I probably would have signed up to it. But right, that's where we are with that. Okay, so I think we've done all of that. Thanks for those questions, everybody. I actually really like the questions coming in. It just sort of gives an extra dimension to these talks. So any questions you got, feel free to use the link, or just put them in Discord, tag me in it, say it's for the call, and I will find it. I promise you. Let's just get rid of some of these. Yep, don't do that, don't do that. Okay, let's bring up what we're going to talk about now. So, title of this was, are you thoroughly sad to have missed the Bitcoin pump? You know, if you have been sat on the sideline, as I've mentioned, that was a difficult thing to deal with. You know, that has that 30% move from consolidating for as many days as it had done up to sort of 35,000, just busting through that 31, 32 level as if it was nothing. Certainly could catch you. So I was on holiday. Now, I'm a sado. I took my Trezor on holiday with me. I didn't need to use it, but yeah, I could have been prepared had it have happened. But where does it leave us now? And what can we do to try and, sort of build our position in the future. Because I suppose for those of us that are on the sideline, or those of us that haven't filled the bags as much as we want, there's definitely almost a knee-jerk reaction to go, right, it's already got to 34,000. I might as well just fill my boots and take some more, because if that's the power it can do pre-halving and pre a formal bull run, then I'll take it. But I think there's some evidence in there to potentially suggest that might not be the most well thought out thought process. And there are some bullish applications as well. We talked at the beginning of this month, it's Uptober. We've seen that narrative about how strong Octobers are. We look at this here. Previous Octobers, 60%, 33%, 47%, 27%, 40%. Sitting at 28. We're not sitting at 28% because I haven't refreshed this. Let's refresh it. 27.5%. So we kind of knew that there was highly likely to be a fairly decent move in this month. And we did talk about in the beginning of the month about it's not just necessarily in October. The traditional markets have a Halloween effect. And without, really complicated things, in previous cycles, in previous years, cryptocurrencies have very closely followed the traditional markets, the S&P, etc. Whereas there's definitely been a disconnect this month, as we have really seen that the S&Ps, the NASDAQ, everything else is really struggling and is massively down. Now, the Halloween effect is for the traditional markets, and that kind of says that from Halloween onwards, so November and December are typically good. And that's typically been good for Bitcoin because they are correlated. But not all the time, as we've seen over the last couple of years. So we could have seen it, and there is still definitely a bullish sentiment to be had. But I want to first focus on where we currently are and whether or not we've seen the last of this rise. And so this is, it's month end tomorrow. This is something that I have used since before the 2021 bull run. I've had to add these levels when I was looking at levels in and around down here. And this is just key levels on the monthly chart. And typically, I don't know why my voice went so high then, a breach of one level normally leads to a movement to either up or down to the next. So that's what we've kind of used. Now, I'll be honest, over the last 6 months, it hasn't really played out like that. Now, you could argue that we could draw one at 25,000 and there would be a case with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levels. But there's just so many lines that it just kind of discredits it. But I think there is a case that could have been drawn. And maybe the case is, do we have a look at whether or not 23.3 is a better one or 25? But anyway, what we've done this month is we have burst through. And this is a pretty strong candle. That's not really, there's no huge wick to it at the moment. It's not engulfing. The last 2 months have been engulfing. But we've seen it break through there, break through that 31.7 level that was struggling for so much time. And so when this closes, the question is it going to be at 31k or are we going to see 37.5? And 37.5 is a pretty strong level. Previously, it has really shown to have either a good level of support or resistance there. Or we go back to 31.7, which has also been very strong. And I know it sounds like I've just been a sitting on the fence politician here, but they are now the two levels that we need to focus on. Yeah, 29 might still be in play, but I want to see what this is going to do. Now, despite such a strong green candle, we do need to consider. Actually, so this is something that I drew quite a while back with some narrative of, if it breaks here, this is where we were. I posted this in Discord, and I expect to see a retest down to around about 24,000. And we never quite got there. We got to 25. I kind of explained what I expected to see. I'm not really, too fussed about this. I do want to keep this, and so I've created a new chart based exactly off this. But what's interesting is this trend line. This is what I based it on, because it was getting closer and closer here, and I was worried that if it doesn't bounce, it's going to break through, and we're going to lose it. Well, let's get rid of everything else and just draw that trend line on, and look at bang where it turned around, exactly where this trend line is. So we've had a breach of the trend line. We've had some a sudden sharp drop off, some consolidation, some momentum that's taken it back up, and then as soon as it's hit that trend line again, it's been rejected from it. And this is on the weekly now, and that weekly did close below it. So it's interesting. I'm not saying it is absolutely everything, but it's interesting that where it found its level of resistance was right on an extension of this trend line. So that's why I think, you know, this chart, all this needs updating, because obviously these are levels of liquidity and liquidation areas. Well, these ones are certainly gone, so we need to redo that. But it's just an interesting one. And this is just showing potentially an area for where it turned around. Now, actually, 34,000, 35,000, again, on the weekly, if I can find rectangle, has an awful lot of price history as well. So again, no surprise that it starts to run into problems in and around previous price. That's why we use this. This is why we have these macro charts, and we try and use the charts with the longest timelines, so we can go back and see what previous price support, because yeah, okay, there is support and resistance horizontally, diagonally with price action, but there's also horizontally in terms of previous price action. And it has currently turned around there. Now, the next two things that I'm going to use are stuff that I've talked about in the past, but I don't regularly use on a day-to-day basis. But just to give you an idea potentially where we at and if we're at a turning point. And that's the RSI and the stochastic RSI. Now, for those of you that have not heard me talk about it or not seen anyone else talk about this, easiest way to remember it, the RSI is basically just telling you if a particular asset is overbought or oversold. And if it's above 70, it's typically overbought. And if it's below 30, it's considered to be oversold. The stochastic RSI, although it sounds similar, it's just telling you about momentum. Is there momentum in the market for whatever it needs to do? So if it's low and moving upwards, it's got upwards momentum. You can tell what should generally happen from that. If it's then turned, it's coming back down, it's got downwards momentum. The strength of the momentum is determined by the steepness of the lines. Now, on the weekly, 2 weekly, monthly, whatever you want to use, you know, it doesn't change overnight, so you just need to be careful, which is why I don't really use it that often. But to illustrate the point of where we're at today, I think it is worth just touching on. One thing I will say is whatever you see on both the RSI and the stochastic RSI in terms of levels does not relate to price at all. Okay, so just because we're at a high level here, which is a similar level in the past, you can see the price is still higher. So it's not necessarily, you can just swap them in and out. Okay, so don't base all your eggs just on the fact of, oh, well, the RSI is going up, so the price will definitely increase higher than what a previous one was. That doesn't necessarily equate to what it means. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so what are we looking at the moment? Let's look at the RSI first. So I'll just shrink this one down. Okay, we've got the RSIs. And what am I drawing? Well, I didn't actually draw this line. This 70 line is perfect for the illustration of what I want to get through. Because actually, at the moment, Bitcoin on the weekly chart, it's just about to hit, you know, severely oversold areas. Now, when it's done that in the past, it has struggled to get above it. And we can look back, you know. So it got there in April. Okay, some bullish momentum up there. What happened? It was rejected, and as such, price moved away as well. We go back again. Last time it was up here was right at the peak of the market, 8th of November 2021. Got to it, but it could get no further. It fell away. The bear market was confirmed. Now, I did breach it in the parabolic run of early 2021. Now, I've talked about this in the past, but I'm going to say that the November 2021 shouldn't have been, and that sounds silly. I don't think this was meant to be the highs of the market. I think this was just almost an accident. And actually, this was a retest dead cat bounce that actually just happened for a day to peak over the 64,000 that we got to here. And if anything, you know, should have really finished a little bit low. But that doesn't necessarily, what happened. But a lot of the other indicators that I use really signified that this level right here was the peak of the market. And okay, it was $5,000 off where the peak was, but they were both only up there for a day. But anyway, it doesn't necessarily matter. Going back to what I was talking about, we have a look at this level here in August of 2020 is rejected away, price falls away. Back again over here, support and resistance, but again, the resistance one in August 19 hits it, and then it rejects, falls away, price sort of follows as well. And we've seen it countless times, you know, oops, 1 minute, goes all the way back. So the point I'm trying to make at the moment is we have seen a very positive climb in price. And what we're getting at the moment is that it is now being considered overbought, which typically means that unless there is further momentum left within that move, what we're going to see is either price stagnate whilst the RSI resets, or as the RSI resets, people are going to be selling into that, and we'll see the price fall away. So we need to understand where we are with momentum. Well, we have a momentum indicator, as I said. Not that I can get it to move up again. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Here it is. And that is a stochastic RSI. Tell you what, we can just get rid of that one, but we don't need it. Okay, and so what we've got here, we've got a red line and a green line. We've got a slow moving average and a fast moving average. And typically what you see is the blue, which is the fast moving average. I think it's the 8, and the orange is the 21. You have to correct me on those, I can't remember. It doesn't necessarily matter. What we see is every so often we dip down into no momentum, and then we have these bursts up. We can see, you know, we had some selling pressure, the momentum was going down, so we were having sell momentum, big consolidation, and then we had that cross. We had the break above the 20. When we break above the 20, typically what we then see is a sharp move upwards. Okay, and that's exactly what happened. And we had, you know, a couple of weeks of very strong momentum. We've seen it previously. So we had the drop down around about 7th of November, FTX crashing back down, so that negative momentum crosses back over, and we break into the new year. The momentum shoots up. We get that first rise, pulls back, we get that second rise. See how this one went over? We got a little bit of momentum, but it doesn't equate. You know, it's a similar level of price, but we had the extra momentum that took us there. Then the momentum fell away, started to fall away, shot back up. Didn't make it all the way back up on the momentum sentiment, but it turned, changed, ran out of positive momentum. The RSI was again hit a level of resistance, although I didn't show you it, but it's sloping in this instance, and it fell away. And the point I'm trying to make is the RSI is at 70, which is getting close to overbought. Now that doesn't mean that it'll turn around, but what we need is further momentum in the market. Well, if we're looking at a stochastic RSI on the weekly, then actually we're getting pretty high to in areas where it typically turns around. And so we may be running out of that momentum. Now it's the weekly, so it could take 2 or 3 candles before we actually get to that level. So it doesn't mean we're going to turn around now, but we're getting indications that potentially we might not see a sustained increase going up there. Now, what does that mean? Well, as we've seen, what could happen is we just see the momentum cool off, but the price consolidate. That's the best case for Bitcoin. But if we then start to see that actually, you know, as the momentum, as the RSI gets sort of overbought to oversold, as it starts to move down, and then we start to see a turn in momentum here, and then that sell pressure equates into people selling their Bitcoin, we might see a recovery in it. And that is healthy. When we talk about these healthy pullbacks on prices after large upticks, that is resetting indicators such as the RSI and the stochastic RSI. So there's nothing wrong with that. And we've got to bear that in mind. But then we've got one other thing, which I really do, you know, I don't use that often, but we do talk about, and that's the crypto fear and greed index. And we are very well in the greed now. I mean, today we're at 68. Yesterday we were at 72. 72. To give you a sort of a perspective of what that is, last time we were at 72, so this is us at the moment, 72. The last time we were there was the 13th of November, if I can get it. Come on. 13th of November, 2021. 4 days after the peak in the market. You imagine the peak of the bull market, the amount of greed there is at that particular moment. And people don't know it's turned. And that's the level of greed that we're seeing at the moment. That's the level of sentiment. So, you know, typically the rule of thumb is when people are greedy, sell. When people are fearful, buy. Well, people are greedy at the moment. We've not seen this level of greed since November 2021. So what's that mean? Well, dumb retail are going to assume that we're going to keep on going up, but actually smart money might suggest that now is the time to take profit. What happens when big people take profit? Price drives back down. That will then reset the indicators. You get the whole point. Again, these are on much bigger time frames. It doesn't mean it's going to happen today. It doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. It doesn't even mean it's going to necessarily happen in the first couple of weeks of November. But what we might see is a sentiment shift. That positivity that we've seen over the last couple of weeks just resetting. Doesn't mean we'll lose it all, but just resetting. And so those of you that feel like you may have missed it, who are thoroughly sad, you may get another opportunity to get back in there. Doesn't mean you'll maybe see 26,000 again, but you may get the opportunity to see a lower level. Now, this is something that, really basic kind of thing, but I talk about this before. Oh, let's get it. Is where is, what's the narrative at the moment? What are we in? What trend are we in? We're in an uptick or we're in a downtrend? Well, since the start of the year, weekly time frame again, we've had that low. We've then had high, higher low, higher high, higher low, technically a higher high, higher low, and then we're here at the moment, and we have breached that. So no matter what it does at the moment, we know it's going to be a high high. So we are in an uptick. And what I would say is there is a trend line that's forming. And so for me, what we need to see to break this uptrend, this uptick, is a breach of this trend line and then price putting in a low before that. And if it doesn't do that, then I'm not necessarily too worried about it from a macro point of view. So this is a very rough line. It's on the weekly time frame, but you can kind of see that this may be somewhere, anywhere along. I'll zoom in. Realize I could have zoomed in a while ago for this. Anywhere along this level may present itself as an ideal opportunity to buy in if you have missed it, because we don't know how long it's going to take. But this little circle I've just drawn takes us to the end of the year. But we've seen all these upticks previously. It does take weeks for it to reset. So maybe we do see another 6 to 8 weeks for this to reset. It comes towards the end of the year. We might be looking at around about 31,000 is the best you're going to see. Well, if it is a slow reset, you can then use things like the RSI, the stochastic RSI, again on the higher time frame to see, right, well, have we rebalanced ourselves? Is this now an ideal opportunity from a risk to reward period to actually look to buy in? And I think that's a relatively safe play. Just get rid of this. Oops, I won't get rid of this now. Get rid of this. The other thing to look at is, as I said, we've seen this kind of move happen, haven't we? We've seen start of the year, uptick, and then it pulled back down to reset. And we saw another uptick, pull back down to reset. Another uptick, but not as strong, I've got to admit. Didn't really breach the price. It did get slightly higher. And then a much longer period to consolidate. And then we've had it, haven't we, now? So what's the chance it's going to happen? Going to continue to go up? I say that's unlikely. For me, it feels like, don't know how long it's going to be, but we're going to see some sort of level of resetting. So what have we seen in the past? Well, typically, I think we can argue that we've seen roughly around about 20% in a lot of these. So that was a 20% pullback. This one here, 20%. This one here, 20%. So maybe we do see a 20%. Maybe that's what we're going to see. What's 20%? Down there. Actually 28,000. So that would breach the line, but it wouldn't put in a lower low. So that might be another level that you could potentially look to see and to try and target. If we then go on to the chart you're familiar with by now, is the market maker one. First and foremost, what I've been presuming for a while, for weeks now, has been confirmed and eradicated. So if you remember, I was having W, rise 1, consolidation, rise 2, consolidation, rise 3, some sort of weird end. This is on the 3-day time frame, drop 1, consolidation. Well, now that we've breached that level there and taken out this, we know that's not the case. So we've got to try and redraw it. So we've got the W. Question now is that rise 1 with a consolidation? Arguably. Came back and it did breach the 50. That then becomes your rise 2 with your consolidation. And that's your rise 3. We don't know where the rise 3 is going to end at the moment. Now, there's potential then, if that's the case, maybe we do have some momentum still left within us to form that peak, to get that peak to start the M in. And unfortunately, when we're talking about the daily, the 3 daily, the weekly, whatever, it's going to take us months to find that one out. So, but what we now know is whatever I was driving beforehand wasn't correct. The market decided. The only thing we really need to understand now is whether that's 1, that's 2, and this is 3, or I kind of prefer how I drew it the first time with, oops, that being 1, 2, and 3. But that's not what we're here to have a look at. We're here to have a look at, we've got trap vector candles, we've also got EMAs, and we know if we get far enough away from the VMAs, the price, it gets drawn back some, like a magnet, rubber band, whatever you want to call it. And at the moment, the 5, the 10, the 50, the 200, on the 3 day, we're all a decent distance away from those. Let's drop it down to the day, onto the daily. When you look in the past with some of these large climbs, we've broken away from it, but then we've worked our way back to the 50. We've broken away from it, we've actually lost the 50. Broken away from it, worked away and lost us back to the 50. Broken away from it, sound like a broken record. We found the 50, lost it again. But we've broken away from it. Chances are we're going to re-find it. We just don't know how long it's going to take to get there. But, even if it's a slow burn, this starts to curl like that. Maybe it is 32. And that's going to take a long time, December, to get to there. That's not the best drawn. It won't quite move like that. It'll probably be a bit more like that. That is staying static. But you get the principle of what we're looking at. So it's fair to assume that we will see a move back to the 50 because it always does. On the daily, it's going to take time to get there. But the point I'm trying to labor here is if you did miss it, buying in at the top of a green candle is never the best thing. Feels like you might miss it again. And you may, but it's all about risk to reward. The momentum, the move has already happened. And unless there's more momentum pumped in by an ETF being approved or something along those lines, it's likely it's going to need time to reset. And with that, things like being drawn back to the 50 EMA, taking out exposed vector candles, looking at liquidation levels, imagine how many people have gone long here. There's plenty of opportunity now for market makers to move the price down that way and collect the winnings on all of those. So that's probably what I'm trying to get at. And I've been, I think your looks clear on the weekly. Okay, let's have a look. Yes, I think you're right. Although, could you say that's 1 now? We're in 2. 1, 2, maybe 3 then. That'd be 1. That'd be 2. This is 3, question mark. I missed a couple of other ones. Bijan Swift, Ben Cohen seems very indifferent to spot ETFs in comparison to Sion Market Monster. Do you feel there's a reason to be, or is he too conservative in your eyes? I think for me, as I think I answered, and maybe I already have, but I think it provides that validation, and that will bring in retail. Now, if BlackRock and everybody else, Valkyrie, have already bought their Bitcoin and they've already got their allocation, then they're not necessarily needing to buy more Bitcoin to fund their ETF. It's already funded. If they have to buy it now, after it gets approved, shall I say, then yes, that's gonna push the price up and may keep it up. So I just know I want to be in before they approve it, and then I'll either just get a natural increase because it's in the bull cycle, or I'll get a supercharged one because ETFs have driven the narrative. And either way, I'll be happy. Recvember on the way. Traditionally, BTC performs poorly in November. That is true. And so, we've got to bear that one in mind. May coincide with resetting to take out some of these overstimulated, overbought, lack of momentum positions that we're in. And if you've been around long enough, like Bijan, you'll know that in the last bull run, I used to talk about RSIs and stochastic RSIs all the time because it was important to kind of understand that. But when we've been ranging, not so much. But actually, trying to give you hopefully a bit of a learning point into it's a big green candle there. May not be the best time to buy in. Okay. So what time is it? It's 20 past 9. Well, I'm going to say let's try and give it 10 minutes left, finish for 9:30. Let's have a look at some of the other charts that are available to us. I think the first thing we look at is total, total market cap. Bitcoin's gone up. Where else have we gone up? So in the 2 weeks that I've been away, we've gone from 1 trillion, just double checking, to 1.25 trillion. What is interesting for me, ignore this candle that's just formed. What is interesting is this big green candle has hit the same level that was rejected from on the 10th of July and also on the 10th of April. If that was the 10th of October, I mean, come on, we're gonna do it. Let's put everything in together. But it did slightly close above it. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt there, but that's just potentially how I've drawn this. Be interesting to see now if this gets rejected, this gets turned around at this level. It's been the last 2 times it's hit it, it's gone back down, and so it could very well move that there. Of course, if it does consolidate above this, it's going to help build a great platform for it to hopefully move up to 1.4 trillion, and the knock-on effect that that's going to have on BTC and the like. Speaking of BTC dominance has continued to climb, continued to snake up out throughout the year, looking very similar to where we're at. We tipped 54% before, seeing a bit of a turnaround this week here. So, we are right in this level of noise at the moment, but not really showing any signs of slowing down. Oops. Yeah, the majority of the sort of actual closing of candles and bouncing back, so around about 54.5. So a little bit to go, but again, kind of where that turned around ties in with that. So interesting. We'll have to just keep on watching that one there. I don't personally think I know the likes of Ben Cohen disagree. I don't personally think we have the time, if I'm honest, to get us back to these 73% levels before the market corrects. In previous years, we were well on our way to these levels just before the halvening, and we're just not there at the moment. We got to where we are at the moment a year and a bit before the halvening. 6 months out, 5 months out from the halvening, we were... Is it there? We were already at 70%. So I just don't feel that we have the time to get to that. That's just my honest opinion. Obviously, it doesn't fall off at the halvening because Bitcoin still runs first, but that's going to have some really big candles to do that. Let's have a look at some of this other stuff. Polkadot. I mean, let's go on to Polkadot's finally. A bit like Sam's comment on Atom. Finally started to show a bit of life and break above this 21 EMA, which has been holding it back for months. But we're running into this noise in and around $4.50. Really tough place for it to get back through. So what is nice to see was it perfectly hit the range where I was telling everyone around about 380 to 360. I got a nice little extra bag in and around there. Staked it again already. Which perhaps I should have held on to try and sell, but we've had that nice move up, 20-30% move up, whatever it has been. We're running into this noise. It's got to make a decision on what it's going to do here, and it's just got so many levels to get through. But good to see it that side and consolidating that side of the 21 EMA. Kaz is an interesting one because let's talk about it. I mean, the first thing I see with Kaz, whether or not you draw it from here, which maybe not. You can kind of get what I'm drawing at. There's either that or I don't know if you want to maybe try and do it like that. There's some sort of rising compression, or maybe you go, that's too far. Just take it back to August. We can make this a bit shallower like that. And maybe again, it's a bit flatter. It's like that. But there seems to be some sort of compression that it's going through. It was good to see that it still moved about a similar amount. Bitcoin's moved 28%. I think Kaz has moved around about 24% over the last few weeks. So positive that it has been doing that. But again, we're just getting into levels in which it is, it's previously struggled to get over, and we haven't made it an all-time high. The last all-time high, well, the only all-time high, obviously, was back in September. So we've had these 3 attempts since then, and each time we've kind of fallen away. And we're getting to a crux point. You know, that decision needs to be made. Now, you could make this completely flat, and then that sometimes, you know, some people have that view that a flat one actually breaks north. I think there's much bigger ones to potentially be in play here. Someone said to me there was on the 4 hour there was a potential head and shoulders forming. Let's just get rid of these. I don't. Here's my problem, I suppose, with it. Let's just get a pen out. That's the shoulder, that's the head, and this is the shoulder. I just don't like the size of the gap here. I'm not sure. I think for me, if anything. Oops. I'd be more inclined to say, is that a double top? And the neckline is here or something. Is that what we're looking at? So it's definitely something to sort of have a look at there. I think a lot of people have, you know, you bought in quite well. So, you know, even if that compression starts to play out, whether it's this one, just assume that it is. Even if it plays out to the absolute bottom, it's going to lose 20% down to around about $4. Jesus, 4 cents. Which, you know, is a lot of noise, a lot of previous price action there. The bigger one, okay, it's got a much. I'm on the 4 hour, isn't it? The bigger one's got a much bigger level to fall, but it's just the problem with that is just I feel like is that what I drew last time? Actually, it's only a couple of weeks to get to the apex of that. Falling down to 2 cents, that feels like a big ask. A lot of things in the way there, so I'm not necessarily sure that one plays out. But maybe that level of around about 4 cents could be where it aims to go. Ethereum, I mean, that's done well, hasn't it? I was looking at it just before I went away, thinking, bloody hell, 1,500. But yeah, now getting as high as 1,850. So yeah, moving in and around there. Still that, you know, quite overextended. Is some sort of consolidation there, but I still feel this needs a pullback. Probably to the 382, round about, you know, let's just say 1,700 kind of level. Just sort of consolidate back there before it goes back up. Not necessarily going to run through all of these. Link, so let me just explain that I totally, well, that's a bit unfair on myself. Ballsed up Link though, because I got back in, and then I set a predetermined sell at this level. So I think I did get in sort of around about 736, I think it was. And I went, well, you know, for the last year, it's only ever really got to about 850. So I'll put a sell in at 838 or whatever it is. It'll be fine. So I held it for like, I know it felt like less than a day. And then it never stopped. So I made a little bit again, but I'm now at a position where I'm like, how do I find an opportunity to get back in? What I might do is use my Link money to buy BTC and allocate that for a flip into Link when the Link BTC sort of looks better. So if we go on to Link BTC, taking a much, you know, something. Maybe it's broken out of it actually. Probably has. That's what I've always been looking at, but it might have actually broken out of that now. So maybe look to see if it retests that, buy in, and then wait for it to climb up and then swap out. But anyway, we shall see. Let's go back to portfolio. Talked about gas. Near. So with Near, Near's had an interesting one because look at Near. I mean, it's just been solid. Everyone else at least had some sort of pullback, but this is just not one. So this one for me screams a 50% pullback. This one feels like we're getting to around about 115 again. And if I just go back to where the hell was it? There we go. We just look at Near instead of Link. Should have just typed it in. There we go. So look, like on the 19th of October, the day the price actually started to shoot up, we had 594 million staked. And then we basically unstaked 10%. And then that's just been sold. There's been the buy pressure to do it. So that feels someone's been cashing in, some whale's been cashing in there near. This one feels like it's climbed a lot steeper, a lot faster than most other tokens. So I feel like this one's primed for a correction. Now it's only 33%. That's more than Bitcoin, but it's a lot more than most other alts. It's great for me because I own a lot in there, but I just feel like this has definitely got some move back down. And so maybe a correction to around about sort of the mid-teens might be where it's looking. And then the only other one I think it's worth having a look at before I have a look at some of the questions again is BNB. Good old BNB, because actually BNB didn't get the exciting climb that everybody else did. So we've been monitoring this level here. What we used to have was this one here as well, because of where it was. Now we've 15. So where was it? The day Bitcoin went up was around about the 19th. So from there, bear in mind Bitcoin and most alts have gone either 20 to 30%. Yeah, we had 13, but it's pulled back, and we're talking only around about 8% at the moment. It hit that previous level of price action, and it's faded away. And I'm not adding to any Binance FUD or anything like that, but potentially the amount of FUD that is around there is just people are not feeling as comfortable utilizing their hard spare cash or selling their Bitcoin into Binance because they just don't know where that's going. A lot of uncertainty. Not to mention the fact with old Sam on the witness stand at the moment, what mud he might start throwing at CZ and Binance. So that one just sort of caught my eye that actually this one didn't get as far. Potentially, maybe we still run into trouble. We pull that down, and we lose that. Then it's a real question of whether or not BNB is going to drag everything else down. But that we've covered plenty of times before. So there, another day. Okay, let's have a look at some quick questions. Your revised market maker model is a lot clearer than previous interpreted, which always looks strained. Yeah, that M was a bit weak, I think, Chris. I think you're right. Do bearish stonks and macros still not affect the halvening or ETFs? Yeah, I think they do. I mean, we talk about a complete and utter collapse of the financial market like we had in COVID, or like we had the great house market crash. Then yeah, I think it will. It's still a risk asset. I don't think people are using it. It's starting to move towards maybe a safety, but are we going to? I know there's a war in Ukraine and there's Israel and all of that, but there always seems to be something going on. The US kind of seems like they got their shit together. I'm not saying the UK or the EU has. So yeah, they may feel pain, but are they actually going to get that recession? Are we going to see it, or are we actually going to scrape through the other side of it? So I'm not 100% sold that that's where we're going to be. Interestingly enough, my investment sort of quarterly report came out, and these guys obviously, I think they're one of the second largest investment firms in the UK. So they've obviously up to a lot more information than I am. They always laugh at me with my crypto exposure, but anyway, they are very confident. Well, confident as an investment firm can be, that the US probably will evade. That's a dangerous word to use. Will escape from having a recession. And so maybe we will. Maybe it's bad at the moment, but we'll look back and go, wow, that was an ideal opportunity to buy back in. That's a juicy rising compression. Yep, I think that Greg mentioned the HS. Okay, more of a double top. Yep, agree with that. Nike switch. That is, I mean, that's like a Eddie the Eagle kind of ski jump sort of climb at the moment. Appears buyers have forgotten about the SEC and some alts. Yeah, I still think the Ripple ruling, I think that's given a lot more confidence to a lot of these alts. So if Ripple can get away with it, inverted commas. Now I know that there's still some questions that need to be answered, but where that sits at the moment, I do feel that Ripple's in a stronger position than the SEC is. Anyway, Render. So yeah, Render's had a great one. That's one of my latest ones on there. And that, you're right, this is absolutely skyrocketed. I think I got in whenever I did the video. Where is the video? Anyway, whenever I did the Render video, I bought some. It's around about here, and it's been great. A nice climb. And it's not staked. I kind of wonder whether I should sell. And I think I'm probably going to have a real good look at that tonight, because it's got to that 270 previous sort of top, local top, and it's kind of rejected. I think that might be an ideal time to take some profit. Two top real estate firms, totally, yeah, absolutely. I understand the Chinese real estate, completely get it, but I know nothing about the Chinese economy. I'm not going to pretend that I do. So if it brings us down, it brings us down. That could be a big cancer for banks, absolutely, of course it could. Or do China just print doing their own money printer on and go, you know what, we're a communist party and we'll just lie, cheat, and print our way out of this problem. We can't say that they won't do that, so hey, who knows? Good point by Chris. The SEC seems to have just disappeared. Well, it has, but what, after the ruling, Torres' ruling with Ripple, what are the SEC going to find on some of these other ones? So, I mean, Library's gone under. That was the one that came before Ripple, which is a bit sad, really, but maybe there is a case there. They went hard on Falcon and then stopped everything. Yeah. So that's kind of where we are with a lot of that. I don't know if anyone's got any other questions whilst we. Why did that not? There we go. Just whilst that's happening, so I've been having a bit of think whilst I was away, and as you'll know, as Bijan will know, because I'm sure he's watched them both by now, I produced 2 research videos separately. I actually think it's probably cleaner that I do that going forward. So I think what's going to happen now is the Tuesday call will be capped around about an hour and a half to an hour and 40. And then probably every Friday, I will release a research token video. So there's like a 20-minute video on that. And then people that have to, if they're only interested in the research token, they can just watch that. If they're not interested in research token, they just want to watch the Avenger call. And they're not intertwining. And I don't feel the pressure of having to condense so much information in a short period of time, or allowing a research token to take such a long time and not focusing in things there. So I think that's what I'm going to do going forward. There's loads on the list to choose from. I might choose Mina, seeing as Chris has asked for it. But yeah, we'll see. But I will get one out for you on Friday. Next week, we're going to return back to Tuesday night calls. So it'll be 8 days until we get back to those. Could you add Claw and DNX? I will. The research list at the moment is about 20 tokens long. So, Chris, if you really, really want both of those quickly, send me tag me in something in Discord as to why you want those ahead of time. I'm more than happy to move stuff up and down, but I've heard of DNX, not heard of Claw. But so yeah. And other than that, all that leaves me to do, guys, is just say thanks again. I know I changed the time a bit, so for those of you that are going to watch this tomorrow. Hope nothing has changed too drastically for you. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will speak to you all soon. Cheers now.